Hey, good morning, Sorcery fans. Today's video is going to be a deck tech on the Seer Avatar. Previously on the channel, I did a basic deck tech budget upgrade to all the pre-constructed decks that were in this beta box kit. We did the Earth, the Fire, the Water, and the Air decks. And then we did a Death Speaker two-colored deck. That was an Air-Fire deck. We took that deck to Chicago, MagicCon Chicago with us last month. This was the Death Speaker deck that we built and brought with us. We did not play this deck in Chicago. My opponent played a Death Speaker deck that was very similar to that. And I played my Geomancer Earth deck, which was basically a mono-colored green deck that used Geomancer as the avatar. And I really liked Geomancer because its special ability lets you replace an adjacent rubble with the topmost of your deck, and anytime you played an earth site, you would fill a void next to that site with a piece of rubble, and then the next turn you could tap your avatar and basically put an extra land atlas into play, kind of get a card advantage. So I had an idea to sort of build a card advantage land draw deck that lets you draw cards and draw sites and draw spells. And so I've tweaked the Geomancer Earth deck and I made it a Seer deck. So I'm gonna get rid of the Geomancer and I put in a Seer Avatar. This is an Elite Avatar, which replaces the ordinary Geomancer Avatar. This you can tap to play or draw a site, obviously, but its special abilities at the start of your turn, you look at your next site or spell, and you may put it on the bottom of its deck. So this comes into play because a lot of the cards in this deck are gonna let you draw cards off the top of your site deck or your spell deck, or draw cards off the bottom of your site or spell deck. So if you've looked at the card with Seer, you know which card is on the bottom of your deck, and you could potentially draw that into your hand. You could also know if it's not very good, you can put it at the bottom and then draw a card off the top of your deck, which would be kind of random, but you would know at least it's not the bad card that you put on the bottom of your deck. So we're gonna start with 4 land surveyors. These are ordinary mortals. I had these in the Geomancer deck. You can see that deck tech on the Sorcery playlist I made, but this is an ordinary mortal for 2 mana that has 1 toughness power, and its Genesis abilities, it lets you draw a site when it comes into play. So that becomes handy, especially if you know which site is not on the top of your draw deck. It could be, you could use your Seer Avatar to put a certain site on the bottom of that deck and then draw the next one with Land Surveyor. I also put in 4 copies of Common Sense, which is an Earth spell. It's a magic for 2, has threshold of 1 Earth, and you search your spell book for an ordinary card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Then you shuffle your spell book. So you could grab a Land Surveyor if you need draw advantage and want to draw some sites. You could also grab Bone Rabble, which is the next ordinary card in the deck. It's an Earth minion, undead. It costs 3. It has 1 power toughness. Whenever you play an Earth site, you may summon Bone Rabble from your cemetery to that site. So there are Earth sites in this deck, obviously, because it's a 2-color deck. So ideally, we could use this to block or attack, and if it ends up in our cemetery, the next time we play an Earth site, we can just cast this from our cemetery. And then I put in 2 copies of Dispel because I liked that it can destroy auras and artifacts. So if they're playing Philosopher's Stone or Onyx Core or Amethyst Core, we can just take those out of play. And Divine Healing was a card that I liked a lot. It gives you 7 life. It costs 1, but you need threshold of 3. And this came in really handy when I played my Geomancer deck. My deck was not very good, so this kind of, I played 1 or 2 of these in that game, and it gave me 7 or 14 life, so basically kept my opponent away for a few extra turns. I'm going to keep the 2 mixed terras in this deck. These were in the Geomancer deck. They cost 1. It's a potion, and when you sacrifice the Mixterra, your next Earth spell requires no threshold and costs 3 less to cast. So you could use those to cast either of these 2 cards. Crater Eyes is a great board wipe that was in the Geomancer deck. It's an elite magic, and it costs 8 to cast with 2 Earth. So if you played a Mixterra, you could cast this for 5 mana. And an additional cost to cast, you must discard a site. So if you knew, if you were drawing a few extra sites, you could have an extra one in your hand that you're not going to need to discard to cast Crater Eyes. And then you destroy target site and deal damage to each unit above or below the site in the area of effect. So it does 10 damage to the site, and then the adjacent sites it does 7 damage to, and then nearby sites it does 4 damage to, and then the tertiary sites at the edge of the realm, it does 1, 2, 4, 2, 1 damage in this direction, 1, 2, 4, 2, 1 in that direction, 1, 2, 4, 2, 1, and 1, 2, 4, 2, 1 damage. So that's pretty useful. And then finally, the last Earth creature is this Mountain Giant. I was able to play this in the Geomancer deck. I got it out. I was able to cast it with 8 mana and 4 Earth sites in play. It occupies 4 locations, so you can put it here on the void on the board like that on 4 different sites. It has 8 power toughness. It's kind of a beast, but I like it a lot. So it's basically your win condition is the Mountain Giant. And now for the water spells, I put in 4 copies of Deep Sea Mermaids. These cost 3 mana, have 2 water threshold and power toughness of 1. They have Submerge, and their Genesis ability I really like. It says you draw your bottommost spell. So that comes in really handy if you've used your avatar to look at your next site or spell and put it on the bottom of your deck. So in that case, you would use your Seer to look at the spell, put it at the bottom, and if you knew you were going to play Deep Sea Mermaids next turn, you could draw that card that you put at the bottom. See how that works. And then there's 4 copies of Riptide, which works just the same way. It's an ordinary magic. It costs 2. Target water spell, target water site pulls in an above ground unit it's adjacent to, and you draw a card. So continuing with the draw ability to give you some card advantage. There's also 2 copies of Geyser. It's an exceptional magic that costs 2, and this turn you flood target site, give each minion there airborne, and you draw a card. So pretty good. Then we have 2 copies of Adept Illusionist, which is an elite mortal. This is not the curio because it says skills right here. If it said means, an elite mortal with duplicitous means, you have a $1,000 card in your hand. This is also a spellcaster. It costs 2 mana. It has 2 water threshold, and it does 2 power toughness. Its special ability is you can tap it to search your hand, cemetery, or spellbook for another Adept Illusionist and summon it nearby. Shuffle if needed. So that basically lets you cast a second copy of Adept Illusionist, which is why we're going to play 2 of those in this deck. It is elite, so we can only play 2, but that gives you a little card advantage so that you don't have to draw that card. You can just tutor it up. There is 1 copy of Sea Raider, which costs 3 and does 3 damage. It's an exceptional mortal. When Sea Raider attacks and kills an enemy, its controller discards their topmost spell, which gives you a little bit of card advantage, and you may cast that spell once this turn, ignoring the threshold. So if they have a good spell, regardless of which color or element they're playing, you could be able to cast it with the Sea Raider. I kind of like that ability. Then we have 4 copies of Tufted Turtles. These are ordinary beasts that cost 3 with 1 water threshold, 2 power toughness, but they're very tough to kill because the first time Tufted Turtles would take damage each turn is prevented. So they need to be attacked and then attacked again. So basically they could be chain lightninged and then attacked with another creature, or 2 spells in a row, something like that. But they're very tough because they have that ability. I'm also going to put in 2 potions in the water side of the deck. I'm going to put in the 2 mix aquas. If I had an extra aquamarine core or an onyx core, I'd put those artifacts in, but for now I'm just going to use 2 elite potions since we can play 2 potions. You sacrifice the aqua just like the mixed terra. This turns your next water spell, requires no threshold and costs 3 less to cast. So you could use that to cast Tufted Turtles for free, basically, for the one that you would pay the mix aqua. Or you could cast this Abundance. I like Abundance. It is an elite aura, and the affected sites provide 1 additional mana. So again, mana advantage, card advantage. That's kind of anything that gives you like an extra card or an extra spell or an extra draw, that provides some tempo and is really good in sorcery. Then I have the 20 Atlas sites. If you notice, there were 20 earth spells, 20 water spells. There's 20 atlases. They're kind of divided in half. There's going to be 10 earth, roughly, and 10 water, roughly, because I have some dual sites in there. But I'm going to start with Holy Ground, which is an earth atlas. Its Genesis ability is that each nearby avatar heals 3 life. So I'm going to put 2 of those in the deck. And then hopefully you can cast it near your avatar so that your avatar gains 3 life when you cast it. I'm going to put in 2 copies of Humble Village, which is an earth site, and its Genesis ability is that you may pay 1 mana to summon a foot soldier token here when you drop them into play. I did that with the Geomancer deck and had a ton of foot soldiers, so that was kind of helpful as blockers and defenders. Same thing with Simple Village. 2 copies of Simple Village. It's an ordinary earth site that lets you generate foot soldiers. And finally, 2 copies of Rustic Village. This also is an ordinary earth site that lets you generate foot soldiers. Then I put in 3 copies of Aqueduct, which is the dual earth water site. So this is lets you use it for either earth or water threshold, which we need both in this deck. So I put in 3 copies of Aqueduct. And then the water sites, I put in 3 copies of Autumn River. Autumn River is an ordinary site, and its Genesis ability is that you may look at your next spell, and you may put it on the bottom of your spell book. So that works in hand with the Seer. So you could use either one to look at your next spell and decide if you want to put it on the bottom of your spell book or not. And then you could draw spells with your other cards from either the top or the bottom of your deck once you know where they are in the deck, once you've seen them. Same thing with Spring River. 3 copies of Spring River. Look at your next spell, put it at the bottom of your spell book. And finally, 3 copies of Summer River. Its Genesis ability is you look at your next spell and you put it also at the bottom of your spell book. So that's the deck. I think I'm going to try the Seer Avatar out and let you know how that does. I'm kind of interested in playing more games of Sorcery after I played the Geomancer deck. It was kind of a fun matchup. I think this Avatar is an improvement over Geomancer. Let me know if you've played it in the comments below. What do you think of Seer? Are there any other substitutions you would make to this deck? Would you take out some of these atlases? Would you put in unique atlases? Let me know. I think this is a very budget deck. There's only a couple elite cards, but there's no uniques at all in this deck. So I'm going to give it a ride. I'll let you know how it does. Stay tuned for more sorcery content on the channel. I'm putting together a beta play set of cards. So 4 copies of all the ordinaries, 3 copies of the exceptionals, 2 copies of the elites, and a full set of uniques. I was missing about 16 uniques, but I picked some up on the open market. So I think my next video will probably be an exciting reveal of a complete playset of Sorcery Beta. All right, appreciate everybody for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time on the next episode.